I'm going to introduce our first fabulous speaker this morning, and then he will come on stage in just a moment. So I want to welcome Lars Petersen, the President and CEO of FUJIFILM Biotechnologies. He's a global biotech executive with over 30 years of experience, recognized as a visionary leader in the life science sector. He commands a global contract development and manufacturing organization with over 5,000 employees spread across Denmark, the UK, USA, and Japan. Lars has held leadership positions with Biogen, Genentech Roche, Novo Nordisk, Novozymes, and NNE, and he has successfully executed projects in Europe, in China, and the US. In recognizing his transformational leadership, Lars was awarded the 2025 CPHI Pharma CEO of the Year and named Danish Life Science Executive of the Year for 2024. Please welcome to the stage Lars Petersen.
Thank you, Mike, and what a wonderful story about integrity. Would love to hear more about that. So thank you for welcoming me to ISPE. I was just looking through I couldn't find out when I was at the ISPE last time. It's 20 years ago in Las Vegas, I think. Something like that, 2007? It's interesting, right? Because we are in a time now where I have always been interested in how we come together and collaborate, and I love the credo of come together to benefit and help human lives, or something like that. That's what I took away from what you showed yesterday, Mike. And there's no time. You saw yesterday from Lars Fruergaard how much noise there is in the world right now, and that noise will not go away. And at the midst of all this, we are in the middle of a perfect storm. So no time has been more important for ISPE to come together than right now. And I want to challenge all of you guys today that we still have a long way to go. But the opportunity is huge, and this is the time where you really can make an impact. So it is, you can see the hair is less now, 20 years ago, but some of the discussions we have today, we had 20 years ago. Why do we still have these discussions? Just before I became CEO 4 years ago, I visited Intel's facility in Arizona. They were expanding 2 projects more than $20 billion. And here I saw, I think Susanne brought up yesterday, lights out facilities. But they were describing 30 years ago how they were with manual bath was taking in and out of, and how they looked, 2,000 manufacturing steps. But now they had the control room 1 kilometer away, and the only thing they did was handling deviations. There was tons of people in the building, but there was maintenance people acting on those deviations somebody controlled 1 kilometer away. They were even discussing, they were building a facility in Germany. Should they be able to operate that from the US, operating it in Germany? That weekend I came back and we lost a batch up in Hillerød because of a manual valve was forgotten on a column step. Okay, back to reality, back to our industry, where we all think that this is how purification looks like. So Susanne works for Roche, I worked for Roche one time. The facility, building number 3 at Genentech, who invented the biotech industry, if you go into that facility that I know is closed now, it was built in the middle of the 80s, and you go into Hillerød up here, we just built, they look exactly the same. The downstream skids are running exactly the same way. And I know we talk about, and congratulations with Sanofi for doing robotics facilities, but I'm guessing the downstream runs relatively similar as it did 40 years ago. Why are we doing this? So this is what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. So we definitely know out there are patients waiting, and the breakthrough medicines that are coming constantly, and they are just growing and growing. We can never allow manufacturing to be the bottleneck for that. And why are we often the bottleneck? And why do we often find excuses why we are a bottleneck? What are we doing about it? So this is very, very important to address right now. Because if you look at some of the medicines coming out right now, they're extremely complicated. You heard Suzanne describe some of them. As a CDMO, you see not only Roche, you see the 29 other top 30 pharma companies, and you see all the new biotechs, and you see all the new modalities. I was just doing a study the other day about not ADCs, antibody drug conjugate, but XDCs. We conjugate everything nowadays. The conjugation process is so complicated, and there's so many ways we can do it. I'm trying to figure out right now how to build a facility just a little bit in a generic way. It's almost impossible. So, guys, help. This is the call out to you guys. If you look at the industry in general, it's not because there's a money issue. It's not because we cannot afford it. But we keep on building capabilities. And we keep on maybe not necessarily be ready. I think I was involved in what we thought was one of the last large-scale facilities being built in 2008. Look where we are now. We keep building everywhere in very large scale. And even though we think and we hear, you heard it from Suzanne yesterday, the 3 break drugs that they had now are replaced by 17. But I would imagine that Suzanne even gets surprised 5 years when another big blockbuster drug will hit Roche. This is our industry. This is the beauty of our industry. But we need to be ready for that, right? So what we do that I think is a little bit of a mistake, we keep on looking at the next drug, and then we build a facility, and then we just build capacity. But how can we build capacity that are much more agile, that are much more fitting into the modalities that are coming, that creates much more flexibility for us? That is the big question for us. If you look at this is just a drawing showing how many drugs are coming out on the market and how fast things are exploding. I would guess right now, capacity will not deal with this. The complexity is simply too high. We need to find out a different way of navigating those pipelines, because this is not reducing. This is only going steeper and steeper. So how can we deal with this situation? We cannot allow ourselves to be the bottleneck for this anymore. We've been a bottleneck for many years, and you know it, and I know a lot of consultants, I know a lot of engineering companies, they love the situation, there's a lot of money in this, but we cannot allow, this is not helping patients out there. So if you look back to the story about Intel, I actually was involved in the first modularization project from a big company in this country years ago, right? Where we studied how these guys have done it. This is more than 20 years ago. And we actually created some attempt to get in this direction. Because if you look at the automotive industry and you look at Volkswagen, I know they of course are challenging in a challenging situation right now, but they build platforms and they vary them between different models in different countries. They even buy companies and then they integrate them into the platform. Why are we not doing this? How much is our facilities, how much do they fit together into this world? Back to the semiconductor chips. When I saw this Intel story, I went back and I actually told my CEO in Tokyo, I think we should create a vision of becoming the TSMC of the biopharma industry. For those who doesn't know who TSMC is, this is the Taiwanese company who make chips where they manufacture about 55% of the world market to an efficiency and an automation level that no American company can do this anymore. Even Tim Cook from Apple saying, you can't do this. This will take us decades. So when I went back to my own leadership, I said, I think if we are not dealing with this right now, 5 years from now, we will be another Volkswagen who would say, we used to be the best in the world. We're never more than 5 years away from somebody eating our lunch. So if we are not, ISPE, doing something about it, suddenly TSMC or another company would say, this seems to be a very lucrative business. There's a lot of need for patients. We can see this industry who's for 40 years, 50 years have done the same way. This can be done much, much more effective. So I really congratulate Brandon O'Callaghan with the Sanofi prize, he said to me the other day, he's one of the executives from Sanofi, he went to China to see how they build cars. They can build a plant and spit out a new car in 18 months from scratch. I used to be working for a company where we tried to set a 1-year goal for building a plant. They actually won the first Facility of the Year award in 2002. But I think I remember it took 2 or 3 years to make it work afterwards. And I think you all know these stories. It is very, very complicated to get our industry to work because it is a very complicated task to make medicines that have the right quality so we can guarantee it for patients. So we want to become the TSMC of the industry. If you take a comparison and take the iPhone, I use this example a lot. You don't build an iPhone every time you have a new app. It almost seems like every time we have a new molecule, we have to build a new factory. I know people say we have already industrialized small molecule, we have already industrialized vanilla maps. It's interesting because I can see how many changes we make every single time somebody transfers a product to us. We are getting better and we're improving, and I will talk about that today. But using the iPhone as an example later, we've introduced what I call Kojo X. Kojo X, mostly invented because it's difficult to find a word you can trademark nowadays. Kojo is a Japanese name for improvement and for facility. So we simply introduced this as a new way of looking at how could you actually create an operating system for the entire network, not only our network, for the entire industry. We are opening this so much up that we are talking to all our partners to be part of it. This goes for partners that are customers for us, or partners that are engineering partners, or automation partners, or IT partners. How can we create an ecosystem? Because if we don't, we lose a big opportunity we have to do right now. So I'm just putting a few words out here. Of course, a lot of people sometimes say Kojo X is building a standard facility. Yes, but it's building a network of something that operates as one system. So getting a little bit back to a few things. First, of course, you need to modularize it. And I know you all struggle with this every day. Why are we not standardizing the validation system? Why are we not standardizing the automation? Or why are we not standardizing the valves and the pumps? But it starts somewhere else. Because if you don't start with the foundation, for example, if you don't agree, should we drive in the right or in the left side of the road, it will be chaotic to standardize on what car you drive in. So you simply have to break this down in a much more structured way. What foundation, when you manufacture a modality, what does that consist of? So you are completely structured around how your modality is done in process development, how it's done in clinical operation, how it's done in manufacturing, how it's done when you scale it up, so that you follow that structure end to end. Otherwise, every time you move it from one step to another, you need to, and you know it better than I do. You need to take transfer, you need to create all kinds of jobs of how actually to move it between facilities. Today, it's even difficult to just move it between facilities that are exactly the same way, because they all look different. When I came to Biogen in 2013, John Cox, which I'm one of the really strong mentors I've had in my life, he said, Lars, why did we change all the automation? This is back when I was an automation engineer and thought I knew everything about that. And I said, if you could take the P&ID diagram and you can show me it's exactly the same, then I can take the code and download it from RTP in North Carolina to Denmark. But guess what? All kinds of engineers have made tweaks. And we have to understand that the first day, and we all are proud when we build a facility and we standardize it, but day one that we go into operation, somebody changed something. I had a situation the other day, just where somebody come in and say, we did this in this company, this is the best thing in the world. Yeah, that's good. I begin to say to people now, you can come in with a yellow color or a green color. I don't care as long as the color becomes the same color across everything. Because all engineers come in and they have an idea about how to improve. That's why I'm an engineer, so I allow myself to criticize engineers. That's why we are born into this, but we have to figure out to engineer the right things and not engineer changes. I normally say, if you want to discharge a sequence for a tank, why do you have to reinvent that all the time? Who cares? Does Susanne care or Lars Petersen care? They care about bringing medicines to patients, not how fancy you can make the engineering. Doesn't matter anymore. It matters how we address the pipeline. So you have to find a way to modularize this and follow a structure. I know it can be boring for some people that, oh, now you take out all the innovation, I cannot reinvent everything. You shouldn't reinvent. You should do exactly the same thing. You should find a way to actually reinvent pieces and not reinvent how you do simple processes. So if you look at COJO-X, we look at this as one operating system, basically one operating system across all sites. Process development, clinical manufacturing, 2,000 liter, stainless steel, disposable, 5K, both. And I know somebody would sit in here and say, oh, you can't move from disposable to stainless steel. Yeah, guess what? We've sorted that out a long time ago. But I know it's a challenge for some companies. But you have to look at how do you actually do this? So that's one piece. The other piece is operating system updates. You need to figure out a way every time you make changes. You apply them everywhere. And then you need to find a way to deal with the regional differences that unfortunately still exist. So just going a little bit into just a little picture, boring picture from our network. We've just invested about $8-9 billion in building a network. We have 6 facilities that we're going online with in 3 years. 2 here in Denmark, 2 in North Carolina, 1 in UK and 1 in Japan. They don't necessarily look the same, but if you look at least on the left side here, you can see in Denmark here, you can see the yellow square around it. Now we begin to build them the same with the next to that one is the US one. Now the buildings, we build them exactly the same way. But we even go into the old facility, which I don't know how to point here. Can I do that? But if you look to the left or to the right of the yellow boxes in Denmark, that's the existing facility we started with. But even that facility, we go in and we change it because that's built like 6 bioreactors and then added 6 bioreactors. But because the world has changed and titers are increasing, 4 bioreactors is maybe more what we need today. So now we took the old one and said, instead of having 2 facilities, now we act them as 4 bioreactors. So we actually have 4, 4, 4, and then 2 new ones. The buildings are a little bit different, but the way we operate them, if you go into the plant, you would see you have one manager managing a 4-pack here, one manager a 4-pack here, one manager a 4-pack here. The tier meetings are following the same structure because now we're outside of how you built it. Now we're inside how do we actually operate the same way so the tier meetings are exactly the same way. So tech transfer is done the same way. The updates, oh, we have this change here, so we can do this change here, we can do this change here. All this is, of course, relatively manual now. And we have 9 of these 4-packs, if you take Denmark, US, 9 4-packs that we're starting up in 3 years. It's basically 9 facilities. And on the right side here, you have UK and Japan. We do the same for 2,000 liter and 5,000 liter. Building is a little bit different because you're back to, oh, in Japan we build like this, in UK we build like this. You have to navigate that because it doesn't matter that much that the building is a little bit different. We all know it impacts, but you need to make sure the process is running the same way. Everybody knows the same way. I can tell you this, of course, I get back to how you get the organization to rally around this. It's maybe an even bigger challenge than the technology challenge. And then the OS update. Of course, we need to find a way that this is updated frequently. I tell my team right now, I want the Waymo model. Everybody knows Waymo. I go to JP Morgan every year to San Francisco, and you have these driverless trucks or cars, taxis. They do 1 million trips a week right now in 6 cities. They have about a ninth or a tenth of the incidents of people-driven cars. If they suddenly run into a roundabout where they have an issue they've never seen before, they take that issue back, they simulate it in an AI model 10,000 times, and then they distribute it to every car in the world. How can we do that with people? When you meet a roundabout. But why don't our facilities work this way? So I'm out there with my team, and especially the AI folks, they're a little bit like, I want it to run the same way. I want to run the same way as Waymo. Every time we see a change, download it everywhere. So our Code2X system needs to work that way, that we upgrade it the same way. I don't even think this requires AI, but AI, of course, makes it much, much easier. Regional differences. I'm challenging the teams, and maybe I have partners and customers in this room, but sometimes I go out there and say, we would actually like to get to a place where you can just do a PBQ in one country and a PBQ in another country without any extra effort. Or a tech transfer. So we are beginning to think about giving them away, because the facilities we build right now is so technical equivalent that our problem should not be to go to EMA and go to FDA and say, oh, you need to validate it again. It's exactly the same. What's the problem here? We can't do that because of course we're CDMO, but we are challenging our customers to get into this dialogue. And right now we have EMA approving facilities in the US and FDA look at them in Europe. And for the large-scale facilities, we at least have 3 clients right now who wants to do PBQ of the same product in the same 2 facilities. Because now you have the agility and the scalability, because it's all about getting drugs to patients. So we are creating options across the network this way. But I would also say building a facility in Denmark and take that as a standard and build that in North Carolina and flip around and standardize that back to Denmark and do that again, it creates a few challenges. I think if we have anybody from my project team in Denmark, of course, when maintenance people suddenly have seen, oh, what we have fixed in Denmark over 10 years now, they've changed it in the US and now we have to change it back again. It's all about people. You have to really get the organization organized around how to do this. I'm sure 5-10 years from now, we will look back and we will look at our facilities and see we have likely done better than we've ever dreamed about. But right now, running so many facilities and building them and getting them started at the same time in 4 different countries in a Code2X mindset is very challenging. And I'm sure everybody that knows what we're doing, they will say, oh, Lars, you're a little bit ahead of what we actually are doing. But this is what we are getting to. Of course, we need to make sure that AI is improving this. So right now we're getting into a phase where we want to go through AI, everything we do before we start operations, so we know that we're not guessing, but we are actually planning what to do. When we are in manufacturing, we want, of course, to detect before we see a deviation. We all know deviations when you start a new facility is definitely very challenging. And we want to make sure that when we're done, that we have all the learnings applied and then distributed globally. We've spent a lot of time the last 3 years creating an organization who structurally support this way of working, because it's very hard. It's very hard to get. So the daily challenges I have between 2 site heads who wants to agree that they disagree so they can go do their own stuff. I know how it is. I used to be a site head, so don't fool me. They just want to do their own business and get out of here. That's how it is. But we're forcing them to work together. We're forcing them to meet every day. We're forcing that connection all the levels down. We're creating a governance around it. So that yellow and red color will not be, if you can come in with an improvement, but you're not allowed to implement that unless you've been going into the governance team where all sides agree this is the color we choose. We may not implement it the same day, but at least we implement it according to a roadmap. Because if you don't do that, AI will not really work. I know we all love AI, but if you have a standard foundation, a standard structure to stand on, to apply AI is a much less challenge. Because now you can compare data much, much easier. So you can look at the network for us is a little bit like this. So this is the number one thing, and I'm working on this on a daily basis. I have to say it's not easy. Every time I get into a site, I'm like, you cannot just look at your site. You need to look at this picture. You have to think about this picture all the time. That you start somewhere in process development, you do move into maybe sometimes smaller scale, mid-scale, large scale, but we have a lot of movements. Just look at this picture here. This happens constantly, that we move something from small scale to large scale, or from process development into small scale, or between facilities. And of course you want to be able to do this in a structured way, so you know when you move from development, or you move from large to small scale, or you move between them, that you actually have the same structure. And of course, AI is early stages for us, but you have to think this in at the same time. I don't know how you force it in, but I don't think about AI as only something that needs to improve daily operations or daily activities, but you need to take your entire supply chain. You need to make sure the entire network uses AI. So I get to a meeting, I sit in some CEO network in the US, and every time it gets to me, and this is not life science, this is all kinds of AI applicable. Every time it gets to me, I'm like, we're a little bit behind versus many other industries. It's moving so fast. So how can we get, I loved what I saw, I don't know if Susanne is here today. I love what she showed yesterday. Some of these stories are really, really important, but I do think we need to think about it across the entire network. For years, I've been smiling a little bit when I meet with quality people, when we talk about quality by design, and they're like, yeah, this is very hard. Yeah, it is, because I guess they are looking at their own job can be reduced, so it's very hard to remove my own job, right? There is a reason why I work a lot with C-suite level in our customers, because they all are very, and this is for you, right? They all are very annoyed why they need 100,000 people to run an organization. And I think they will all be very challenged. I was at the Longwood conference in San Francisco this year. When you begin to see some of these pure-born AI companies coming out of biotech right now that reduces the phase 1 studies from 4 years to 2 years, will they eat the lunch of the big pharma companies? I think the pressure that are coming is high, and the opportunity is equally high. So what can we do about this? There's no question when drugs are beginning to be introduced even faster, this community would have an even bigger challenge. Because now suddenly you need to build these facilities faster, and you can't build that. So it's not about capacity, it's about intelligent manufacturing. How can you build them so you don't have to rebuild them all the time? So I think the benefits are obvious, right? I don't need to go into this slide. But I am challenging very often, should we give away tech transfer? Should we actually begin to do? So my CQO right now, she's beginning to say, I don't know if clients really want to do a PBQ on 2 sites. Let's just do it for them. We can't do that naturally. But that's the thinking we are getting into. Why limit yourself? And I know how hard it is today to make a tech transfer from one facility to another. That's why we often don't do it, because it's just another very complicated project. How can we reduce that burden? Of course, this is maybe a little bit of future, but it should be running like this. Why not? I'm actually very happy right now. I don't know if Jacobs is in the room. I saw they were a sponsor. But when I talked to Bob Bragada, CEO of Jacobs, he says, Lars, you are actually right now building more copy facilities than Intel is doing. And I think he knows because he's on both sides. But we're not operating in that way. We need to operate them, not only building them this way. So it's about the entire chain. It's about a modular architecture. It's about a harmonized network and how this feed loop changed from building capacity to a global learning network. So for us, Code2X is not a standard modular build. It's a learning system where every time we run something, we learn from it immediately. So I don't know if anybody like me, I study Steve Jobs all the time because the simplicity that Apple created. And the first time, I still remember that moment when I took out an iPhone and I didn't have to read the manual like I have to do with all kinds of other technologies. It just connects. Why are we taking it for granted that it has to be complicated to build our facilities? Thank you very much.